Nigeria's currency in circulation hit an all-time high last month despite the central bank's monetary policy tightening. The Naira in circulation surged to 3.97 trillion Naira in May, resulting in a 314.6 billion Naira increase year to date. Currency in circulation refers to the amount of cash within a country that is physically used to conduct transactions between consumers and businesses. Over 90% of currency in circulation is held outside the banking system, indicating that Nigerians are holding more cash. Analysts say this is one of the drivers of the country's inflation. So why is the currency in circulation rising despite the CBN's efforts? Joining me now is economist Dr. Justin Amase. He's the lead consultant for the firm Coleman and Hassan International Limited. Good to see you, and thanks for your time. Too much money in our hands, not enough in the banks, and perhaps this is also chasing maybe fewer goods or looking at the purchasing power. But the dynamics of what's been explained now, talking about what Nigeria is going through, how does this pan out vis-a-vis looking at the central bank's function of ensuring that that doesn't happen in the first place?
Yeah, thank you, Suleiman. Let me say that for the purpose of those who may not be familiar with the way the system works, especially how the central bank manages the money supply in such a way that you do not have excess of it, either by way of the best money or the money in circulation. The quantity of money in circulation is a function of the overall money supply. And that can be influenced in two ways. The first is that it can be influenced by policy. It can be influenced by policy action. For instance, when the economy is expanding, which we call overheating, if it's expanding very fast, the central bank tries to apply the brakes by reducing the quantity of money available in the economy. So that policy that we are seeing now, people call it monetary tightening, that is contractionally monetary policy, is what reduces money supply. So naturally it will be expected that having, step up the mop-up operation of the liquidity in the system. By now, the quantity of currency in circulation would have gone down significantly.
Would have gone down?
Yeah, would have gone down, because it is part of the liquidity that determines how people demand for goods and services. In other words, it determines the kind of prices people are willing to pay. So normally, if you have much more money in circulation and the output, the goods and services produced are not sufficient, or they are far lower than that, then people demand and pay higher for the same type of goods and services.
So, Dr. Amase, sorry to cut you there. That was the reason I asked the Action Aid earlier concerning food, when he was explaining insecurity of food in Nigeria, that perhaps that's what we have, that people have money, but you have fewer goods, fewer foodstuff, and perhaps why in anyone's world would Gary suddenly be almost out of the reach of anyone?
Yeah, thank you.
So your point is pointing to the fact that that may be a reason. I want you to tie this, don't lose your train of thought, to also our cashless policy lifestyle. How is it holding on? Is it catching on at all, looking at this figure that we're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to explain a little more broadly. Factors that influence the price level they are just not policy factors alone. They are structural. There are structural factors. So if you look at the Nigerian economy, a large size of the activities is carried out in the informal sector. So it is very difficult to regulate or for monetary policy to keep all that is happening there under control. As a result, only 74% of Nigerians have been included by the monetary system. In other words, financial inclusion, as at this year, covers only 74% of Nigerians. And if you take the population of Nigeria at roughly 230 million, then 26% of that, which is about 60 million people, they are not included in the modern financial system that is operating in Nigeria. In other words, probably they don't have access to bank account or ATM cards and so on, and other instruments for, transacting with cash. So that 60 million, if you know, is more than the population of another African country. So that population is controlling a sizable amount of money. So that problem is a structural problem, not a policy problem. One, because the economy as a whole is still operating at a predominantly agrarian level. That's why agri activity takes almost 70% of employment. So if we talk about the cashless policy, the cashless policy cannot cover that 60 million. In other words, they keep their cash irrespective of whatever is the policy direction of the CBN.
Dr. Amase, off the top of my head, I'm asking the question, what happened to the cooperatives and even the grassroots banking, system? We saw some of them back then. Yes. And some are still very much there. Yes. Are they doing enough to actually capture some of these people who perhaps don't have much faith in the banking system?
Yeah, the cooperatives are doing enough, but there is a fundamental factor which is partly policy and partly structural. The level of inflation now is such that people have barely enough to cover their own consumption needs or to pay for the kind of essential item, both food and other items that they need. So most of the time they keep their money in cash. And so as inflation increases and you need more cash to buy the essential goods that you need to use, especially those that are used almost on a daily basis, like foodstuff, cosmetics, and so on. You keep the cash. And another reason is that as inflation, last April, inflation went up to 33.69, one of the highest in the world. So the amount of money you need to pay for goods and services that you have to keep is higher. So the higher the inflation, the higher the demand for cash or money to pay for goods and services. So as Nigerian inflation is increasing month on month and year on year, it means people need more cash to pay. There is another factor. Generally, the Nigerian monetary authorities have run a loose monetary policy right from the time of COVID-19 intervention. I will tell you why. Because prior to, let's say from 1992 to around 2000, the gap between economic growth and money supply was very narrow. That decade, that average economic growth was 7%. And then we were having money supply growing at about from 10 to a maximum of 15%. What we have now is that money has been growing, money supply has been growing rapidly. The result is that if you watch the month-on-month figure, Money supply has grown for the past few months, over 70%.
Now let's see if
But
we can close
the
on
economy,
this. Yeah, go ahead.
the economy of Nigeria, the growth rate for last quarter, I think about 2.59 or something, or 2.9. So you can see the gap. Growth, determine output, level of output. So if the volume of money in the economy is far higher, the growth there is far higher than the economic growth, you are going to have a problem of excess liquidity and inflation. So even the policies that have been adopted by the Tinubu administration can never completely reduce the impact of this, because policy lags on average for an economy that has so many structural limitations. The effect of the transmission of policy, or what they call policy lag, take on average of 2 years to 3 years and above. So it will be difficult for the central bank to be able to control the hangover of excess money in the economy. But don't forget that there is the factor of dollarization.
And I want us to look at this in closing. Just one bad apple just might spoil the lot. The case of a bank that has just gone under, and even though NDIC is working, very hard to see that people get their monies back, doesn't that also activate also, some kind of fear in people's confidence in the sector?
Yeah. I was coming.
Oh, you were coming. I was coming to the issue. I like you to close on that. You use that point to wrap up.
Yes, there are two levels of confidence issue in the Nigerian economy. The first level is in the financial system, especially in the banks. You will notice that a lot of banks have been applying many bank charges. I remember my own bank last month. I was just hit with 14,500 naira. They call it ATM service. So bank charges have discouraged a lot of people from using. That's why they have migrated to this fintech financial institution. The second factor is that the banks themselves have been under major risks, have been facing major risks at the moment. One, you notice heritage banks went down. Two, the recapitalization is going to carry the former experience, where some banks were not able to meet. So what people are doing is to proactively position themselves to manage their risks by keeping a buffer, because the confidence in the system is not very high. Then there is the issue of the confidence in the currency itself. People used to be proud of pension, but now pension has been eroded completely by erosion. So people cannot save, in spite of the fact that interest rate is very high. They cannot save because the value of money in a savings account now will erode faster. So you rather take the money now and buy the item whose prices you suspect will go up very high in the future. Then the issue of confidence in the Naira itself. In finance, we talk about, and economics talk about it as a store of value.
Yeah.
The exchange rate has been depreciating very rapidly, and inflation has been rising rapidly. So the value of the Naira has been totally undermined by those factors. So that is why the issue of dollarization. People for some time have been keeping their their worth in dollars, because the value of dollars is stable. But the impact of that on what is happening now, which we are discussing, is that because of inflation and the rise in prices, a lot of the people that keep their worth or assets in dollars are now de-dollarizing them to get cash, because you need to take 500,000 today to buy what you used to take 100,000.
Well, and that's what we have in this conversation. We'd like to thank you for your time, economist Dr. Justin Amase, lead consultant for Coleman and Hanson International Limited. Thank you for coming on Newsline.
Thank you so much, sir.